Hello, this is Ed Eckholdt. I'm bringing you a video package of recording of numerous films I've taken, between 500 and 600 films in Indochina in the 1960s, and I've had them put on a video cassette which runs about 1 hour and 45 minutes. You will find that primarily the films are of the early part of Laos, and we'll start right in with the Air America CAD operations, bid on Continental Air Services and Bird and Son as well. I've made these films some 37 years ago when I first came to Indochina to fly the C-46 for Air America in Laos. Eventually I qualified in the C-123, the de Havilland Caribou, and the Continental C-130E. I also flew the Blackbirds, B-26Bs, and the T-28Bs on operations in Laos. This photograph was taken of me shortly after we got our new uniforms issued to us by Air America. We initially never had any uniform requirement until just shortly after 1962, and then we were all outfitted in Air America uniforms. There I am in the de Havilland Caribou. And another photograph of me up country in Laos. In front of a Bravo 851 Caribou that I ferried over from Canada, 1962. And I'm standing by one of the T-28s that I flew with the Laotian emblem, 500 round guns. There's a picture of Gary Malmberg, taken in early 1964. I had just checked him out in the Caribou. And Hong Kong Wu, affable co-pilot, flew hundreds of hours with HK. Picture of Les Strauss, flying right seat in the Caribou, getting some familiarization training before I checked him out. This is Jack Kaufman. He flew C-123s in the early 1960s. Fred Kurz, Lionel Hastings in front of his DC-3, which he regularly flew for Air America. Al Rich landing his Helio with Pop Buell and Father Bouchard and some males up country in Laos. Mark Trail stepping out of a C-46 with his flight gear. Red Fredericks with his DC-3 on the ground in Hong Kong. Another view of Red. Used to call him Old Sarge. He's one of the few flying Sergeant Marines. Ben Coleman in operations in Vientiane. Joe Hazen with a fistful of money. Don Campbell, everybody's friend. Don Coney in the center. C-130E with Continental. Don Coney on the left with Pop Buell. Ed Dearborn and Ed Eckholdt. Don Coney on the left with the camera, with Pop Buell and Tony DeRizzi kneeling on the right. Ed Eckholdt, once again in the Caribou. Al Rich with his Helio Courier after landing Samtong. Bob the Turner and Leroy the Tender. Joe Hazen with pockets full of money. Tom Cruise flying co-pilot in a C-123. That's Billy Zeidler flying along in the Caribou. And H.K. Wu, everybody's Caribou co-pilot. He was one of our best co-pilots. Big Andy Anderson on the ground at Mung Sui next to a C-123, Caribou in the background. Hugh Marsh, Leroy the Tender on a wing of the Caribou. Gary Malmberg getting Caribou checkout. Jim Boyle's on the left with Al White near the crew hostel in Vientiane. Bang Pao up country in Samtong. Big Andy Anderson with an afternoon off flying. Don Campbell about to put his sunglasses on. Everybody's friend. Roger Bunner during a crew pickup in Vientiane. Ken Milan, C-123. Tom Crone sitting in the right seat of a Z-47. And Jack Rife. This is taken in Taipei, 1963. Howard Carroll, one of the Caribou co-pilots. Pop Buell up country, some of the natives. And Lionel Hastings in Vientiane on the ramp. Chief pilot of the co-pilots, Porter Huff. Dick Crafts, just after he changed over from the helicopters into the Helio. Bob the Turner. Tom Cruise was with Continental at this time, flying the C-130. Hong Kong Wu on a wet ramp in Vientiane. Pop Buell again with some of the natives. Flight operations in Vientiane. On the left is Leroy the Tender with Tom Cruise. Got their airdrop schedules. There's Don Campbell firing up a C-123, going out for airdrops. Ed Eckholdt, standing next to 853 Caribou. Ben Franklin, hard at work, looking for a drop zone while we're up country. Ed Adams, down in Bangkok. Al White, sitting outside the Hotel Constellation in Vientiane. Jack Kaufman, down in Bangkok, 1964. Mac McCullum, Tony DeRizzi in Vientiane. One of the customers in his usual pose with Tony DeRizzi. Bill Taylor used to work with Pop Buell up country. Mert Bassler. Carl Kennedy. Ed Eckholdt in the Caribou. Mac McCullum again. Down at Kong Island, south of Pak Se, Gary Malmberg and Bob LeTurner trying to dig out the right main landing gear. Jack Rife down in Bangkok at the swimming pool. There's Charlie Griffith. He was one of the station managers in Hong Kong. He used to meet all the aircraft. Generally, you'd find him in a all-white outfit most of the time. Nice guy. Met all the airplanes. Took care of all the crews. C.T. Chow, another one of the venerable Chinese co-pilots for the Caribou. Hank Schiller on the ground there. Roy Young up on the wing refueling in Saigon. Roy Young at the pool in Bangkok. Ed Dearborn with that "come and I'll give you that look." C.M. Wong, who used to handle the crew scheduling board for the flight crews. Ed Eckholdt in the Caribou once again. Joe Hazen. Another picture of Joe, just as he was getting his check ride in the Caribou. And Ben Franklin in an alert mode. Got killed in a porter. Pop Buell, up country. Tony DeRizzi, Caribou checkout. Ed Eckholdt on the left with Ray Shords. Ray was one of the ops managers out of Bangkok that came to visit all the time. Down at the pool in Bangkok, Joe Hazen on the left, Tom Cruise down in the pool. Ed Eckholdt and Ray Shords in Vientiane. Roy Young sitting down on the left, and that's Joe Hazen standing. Joe on the left, Big Andy Anderson in the background center, Tom Cruise in the lower right of the pool. Stan Wilson, one of the helicopter crewmen out of Vientiane, before flight crew. That's Maury Kensler on the left, Fred Kurz on the right, up Samtong about 1963. Father Bouchard, somewhere up country in Laos. Tom Ward used to work closely with Pop Buell in Samtong all the time. Jim Voiles in a C-123. And that's Chuck Cameron in a B-26. Joe Hazen with a fistful of dollars. Payday. Paul Quackenbush on the left with Tony DeRizzi. Herbie Lou on the ramp near the old wooden tower in Vientiane. Herbie got killed in a C-46 in Thailand. Ed Eckholdt, scuba gear, down at Pattaya, Gulf of Siam. Carl Kennedy on the same trip, scuba gear. Offshore islands from down at Pattaya, marvelous little place for scuba diving. The boat you see here belonged to Ed Eckholdt and Don Campbell. Carl Kennedy close-up. Another one of Carl. Beautiful water in Pattaya, as you can see by the photographs. This is the pond at Tom and Knit House. You'll see all the resident regulars. That's Ed Eckholdt in the center. The rubber boat that I bought for scuba diving, it's being checked out by Ed Dearborn, Lionel Hastings, and D.I. Coney. See if it was going to be seaworthy. As you can see, they decided to give it a pre-flight. Dearborn and Hastings. There's old Lionel and Ed Dearborn. Inverted my boat. And Ed, maybe he has second thoughts. It might be seaworthy after all. Unfortunately, it wasn't. It exploded, as you can see from the effect here. Jack Rife in Bangkok, 63. Hugh Marsh primarily flew for SAT Tokyo, came down occasionally to Laos. Ed Eckholdt in a Caribou. George Calhoun, operations in Vientiane. And that shiny Helio, you can just barely make out Maury Kensler. Don Coney, up country, with his movie camera. Gary Malmberg on the left, Bill Andrusevic on the right. R.C. Smith in the center. Ed Eckholdt, attempting to refuel a Caribou up in Longcheng just after we had flown the first one in. As you can see, it was a rather tedious task. So I got my co-pilot to do it for me, Leroy Latender. Eckholdt in a Caribou. Roland Smith. Came out in 1963. He only stayed for about a month and then he left. Didn't care for it. This is a DC-6 of cats. Bob Rousselot is on the left and Stu Dew on the right. That says it all. Hong Kong Wu pointing at the Air America. That's Ed Eckholdt with a little old Chinese fellow. Walked out of the mountains, shoeless. Came for a visit. Red Frederick in his patio, Bangkok at the Tom and Knit House. Ed Dearborn heading this way from a Caribou. And Ed Dearborn proceeding out to his Helio Courier. Hong Kong Wu, HK was one of our favorite Chinese co-pilots for the Caribou. Leroy Latender on the left, Bill Donovan on the right. Pete Parker in the Cat Mandarin jet, heading for Hong Kong, days off. Art Wilson, Shower Shoes Art, sitting in a DC-3. Ed Dearborn on the left with DJ Smith over on the right. Red Fredericks down in Patpong, outside Max's bar, next to the Red Door and Misu's Kitchen in the distance. This is Bill Laughlin, taken in Bangkok in 1964, flew C-46s. DJ Smith again. He only stayed for a few months and then left. H.K. Wu, Ed Dearborn, Roland Smith, Ben Coleman, and Jimmy Pearson, Vientiane. Ed Eckholdt with a captured recoilless rifle, up country at Site 58. Roy Young in Saigon, about 1964. Eckholdt with a Caribou again. Dave Lampard. Jim McFarland, Continental Air Services, Vientiane. Hank Schiller, down in Saigon. On the Convair 880 Mandarin jet, Fred Walker and Phyllis Walker, looking this way. Flight attendant in the center is Juliet Huang. Ed Eckholdt with one of the flight attendants, Marina Shea. Jack Rife ordering drinks from Juliet. Evelyn Quay and Ed Eckholdt, another one of Kat's lovely girls. Jack Marshall aboard the Convair 880, same flight. Ed Eckholdt with a pair of the girls, Marina Shea and Evelyn Quay. Jack Rife. Bella Wu, one of Kat's probably loveliest girls they had. And some of the other girls who were flight attendants with Kat on the Convair 880. Flew between Taipei, Bangkok, Hong Kong, Tokyo, Manila quite regularly. Ed Dearborn on his motorcycle in Laos. The girl on the ground is Noi. That's Tony DeRizzi's Thai wife. Carl Kennedy kneeling over in the back. Al Wilson in the far background. Here's Al Wilson with his arm around Noi, Tony DeRizzi's wife, taken at Pattaya, 1963. Don Campbell at his home with his wife Marilyn, and on the far right is Linda Shorts. That's Pop Buell playing Cameroons with Monty Banks at the Purple Porpoise bar in Vientiane. You guessed it, that's Ed Eckholdt in the doorway of the White Rose. A different day, a different place. Bana, Site 15. Monty Banks again. That's Vang Pao and Tony Poe is on the right with the stick. C.M. Wong, one of the staff in Vientiane, kept track of all the crews. Ed Eckholdt with his golden bracelet in front of 853. And there I am with the one of the Thai Paru kickers with the Caribou. Ed Eckholdt with Bobby Harold, who's on the right, another one of the kickers. That's Leroy Latender on the left with Bobby Harold, taking it at the Plain of Jars at Zhenghuang. Don Schwabel on the right with Ed Eckholdt in the center. We're en route to Canada to ferry back the first two Caribous. That's Ed Eckholdt at a B-26 out of Tainan. Dave Fairbanks, one of the de Havilland Canada reps that came over on the Caribou. Eckholdt in the Caribou. C.T. Chow waving. Ed Eckholdt at the Continental Compound swimming pool. Ed Eckholdt and Bobby Harold when we were on the ground in Zhenghuang with the American ambassador. build account in Hong Kong, looking very British, about 1966. At Dearborn, getting a bit of shut-eye. We were ferrying a C-130 from Marietta, Georgia to Vientiane for Continental. And everybody's friend, magnificent Buddha Don Campbell, with that great smile. Ed Reed in the driving seat of an H-34 Sikorsky helicopter out of Udorn. Wayne Knight, a little bit of inspection on his. Dave Lampard, walking this way from, after landing a Dornier DO-28 for Continental. There he is, posing in front of two of them. Old Bob O'Hamlin, Continental, now works for the FAA in Honolulu. Ed Reed's helicopter again. And in the open doorway, just coming out, is Tom Crone. Difficult to see. Some of the early morning risers from Udorn, helicopter crews up at Samtong. Al Judkins, just after we had landed, proceeding into Vientiane. Tony Bertucci, one of the flight engineers on the 130s, Continental. Tom Gullett on the left and Tom Cruise on the right, outside the C-130E. That's down at Kong Island, still trying to dig out that caribou that went underground in the soft sand. Malmberg on the left and LeTurner in the center. And Red Fredericks being lowered a gin and tonic from the apartment above. Leroy Latender on the left with Ed Eckholdt. Birthday party at Don Campbell's. Far right, Ray Shords, Ernie Graham, and on the left, Fred Gillies and his wife. That's Linda Shords and Marilyn Campbell. There's Fred Gillies in the center again. Ernie Graham and his wife on the far right. The Campbells are on the left. Linda's in the back. Carl Kennedy aboard a Caribou. Don Campbell at his desk in Vientiane. On the right is Pete Parker. He's on the Mandarin jet. And on the left, Ed Eckholdt with one of Vang Pau's men up country. In the pool in Bangkok, Mert Bassler. Flew off a cliff top, California, in a DC-3, crashed in the ocean. Red Fredericks in his patio in Bangkok at the Tom and It House. Gary Malmberg on the left, co-pilot Howard Carroll in the background. The ramp in Vientiane. Howard Carroll on the left, Malmberg on the right. Jack Houston sitting in the upper left seat, the Caribou, and Howard Carroll on the right. That's Davy Rogers. He was the chief mechanic in Vientiane. First class. Another photograph of him. That's Leroy Latender on the left. The girl with the legs is Lily. We're at the Playboy Bar in Taipei. We just arrived, ferrying the Caribous in. Ed Eckholdt standing on top Caribou, up country. Headed this way is Maury Kensler, after parking his Helio. Tall guy in the center, that's Fred Walker, engulfed by all the Mayo girls up at Limeside 57. Chuck Cameron getting his checkout in a B-26. Bill Burrows, one of the co-pilots for the Caribou in Saigon. Colleen and Jack Rife, Happier Days, Bangkok 63. Don Coney and Pop Buell, Upcountry. Gary Malmberg on the ramp in Vientiane. Paul Quackenbush. Jack Leister on a visit from Bangkok. He was one of the ops managers. He used to come up and visit quite often. Ed Eckholdt with one of the Thai Paru kickers that we had for the Caribou. And Ed Eckholdt with H.K. Wu in Vientiane in the early days. That's Tong Sar, Pop Buell's right-hand man. Worked with him very closely at the Limeside 20 alternate, Sam Tong. There's Pop Buell with his favorite parasol. Ed Eckholdt with one of the mechanics, Continental for the C-130. Bob Turner and Howard Carroll, Kong Island still, trying to dig out that Caribou. Gary Malmberg. Roy Young in Saigon. We had just flown 3-9 Yankee to Saigon. Red Fredericks, Bangkok 1962 New Year's Eve. Bob Turner on the left, Jack Houston, and Howie Carroll. On the left, Paul Quackenbush, Ed Eckholdt, Leroy Latender, and Bob Turner. Red Fredericks on the left with Ben Coleman and their motorcycles, sitting in the doorway of the Constellation Hotel in Vientiane. Ben Coleman. Ed Storica, end of the day, filling out his logbook, flying the Helio. Don Campbell in the cockpit of our boat in Pattaya. Don and I spent a lot of hours there, water skiing and fishing from that boat in Pattaya. Grand times when Pattaya was a quiet little place. There's Jim 4. It was way back to Bird and Son. Used to wear black all the time. Al White, just after we had ferried in the C-123s from Clark to Vientiane for Air America. 5 of them. Maurice Cavalieri on the left with Ed Eckholdt. Maurice was the proprietor of the Hotel Constellation in Vientiane. This is in the center right, That's Ben Coleman inspecting a gear on a damaged C-123. Ed Adams down in Tom and Knit House in Bangkok on the patio. Fred Gillies in the center, one of Red Frederick's favorite co-pilots down in Don Muang Airport. This is Bill Coleman trying to get checked out in C-46, 1961 Christmas. Ray Salucci. Tom Cruise on the steps of the C-130 after he came over to Continental. And Herbie Liu got killed in a C-46 in western Thailand dropping supplies. Len Pomeroy in a happy moment. Jack Kaufman, poolside in Bangkok. Al White on his motorcycle, Vientiane, Laos. Another view out by the Constellation Hotel. Jim Voiles on the left, and Al White standing outside the crew hotel hostel in Vientiane. Roy Young in the Caribou. Hank Schiller, Saigon. Bill LeCount and Ed Eckholdt had ferried 39 Yankee in so they could get checked out in it. Bill Phelps, Continental, kicker. Bill Finney, Lou Lowry, also Continental, Loadmasters. There's Bill Finney, Lou Lowry, and Rocky Neeson, all Loadmasters at the time on the 130. There's Bill Finney and Lou Lowry. And a slim trim Rocky Neeson, 1966, Vientiane, Laos. Ed Eckholdt was one of Vang Pao's officers at Site 58. On the left, Ed Eckholdt, Pop Buell, Leroy Latender, and on the far right, Bobby Harold, kicker. Billy Palmer's on the right, and on the left, Rocky Neeson. And one of the best kickers Air America had, Mike Ledoux. There's a view of some of the kickers at work in their gear with the side doors open, dropping a load out of a C-46. Bobby Harold, after a quiet return from a drop, one of the kickers. And Frank Opel, a kicker from Air America. Billy Pyle, another one of Air America's kickers. Another picture of Mike Ledoux. On the left, Mike Ledoux, and on the right is Tom Murray, kickers for Air America. There are 3 of the kickers getting ready to refuel the Caribou up country. Tom Grinder on the right. There's Jim Kilcullen, one of the original Air America Loadmaster kickers. Mike Ledoux in a relaxing moment on the way back from a drop. Another kicker, Chuck Swain, was on the ill-fated C-123 with Fred Riley and Don Heritage that got shot down PDJ. Tom Murray parachuted in the Mekong River with his wife and both drowned. Howie Baker, another kicker, went out the back of Tom Cruise C-123 without a parachute on, caught up in the cargo, and didn't make it, needless to say. Got killed. Mike Ledoux on the left. Another view of the kickers in the doorway of a C-46 hard at work. There's a view of a C-123 dropping palletized chutes with fuel drums on board. Another view of it. You can see how good the job was. C-123 was an excellent airplane for precision dropping of considerable poundage of cargo. Down low level in a valley. Drops completed. Up comes the cargo door. Clean it all up. That's Billy Pyle, one of the kickers, taking a look at the drop. Landed directly on the drop zone, as you can see. And the C-123, all cleaned up now, heading out, climbing across the hills, back to Vientiane for another load. These were the early days before they put on the jet pods on the C-123s. You can see by the conditions of the smokiness and around the terrain that we flew about in those days. That's the impact crater of a C-123 that landed at Mung Sui, nose wheel first, at the lip of the runway. There's Ben Coleman inspecting it. They're welding it down for a ferry flight out. That's Big Andy Anderson, pointing to where the nose came up through the airplane when the wheel hit. Fortunately, no one was standing there. And they got it all put together, welded nose down, flew it out, back to Vientiane. Andy Anderson and Ben Coleman. Looks a bit ungainly with its gear down. These are the 123s we first ferried in from Clark. We checked out in them and we brought 5 back before we changed them all into Air America lugs. Old Asta Zoo Porter in the background behind that one. And on the monsoon-soaked ramp in Vientiane. Another view. This C-123 is Fred Walker. He's approaching short final for landing in Sam Tong, 1963. He and Al Wilson. You can see just where he touches down. Hard on the brakes, goes into full reverse, and he skids to a stop up over the hillside just before the end of the runway. It was quite successful. No one else has ever gone in there. And he turns around after offloading his cargo, and he's up and airborne out of Sam Tong. Climbing out of the bowl. C-46 with Lao markings on it, flown to Air America, over Reedaville Ridge heading south. Another view. That's C-46 dropping palletized cargo, rice load, over a drop zone. This is a load that got hung up on a C-46 that Tony DeRizzi and Ed Eckholdt were flying on a stabilizer. Another C-46 dropping at a small site up country. More 46s undergoing maintenance in Vientiane. Good old solid workhorse, the C-46. Powerful, rugged, reliable, marvelous to fly. A real veritable workhorse. These are Continental Air Services C-46 with 3-bladed props. Three-bladed props they had. Air America had the Curtiss Electric 4-bladed electric prop. Undergoing maintenance in the hangar. You can see the engines in this case of the Air America airplanes. Awaiting maintenance in Vientiane. And these are the Army bailed leased Caribous that were brought into Air America to assist operations. Army Brown on them. This one's landing up at Lima Site 58 at Wamung, up country. They were a bit heavier, about 1,000 pounds more weight. All the radio gear and things that the Army would put on board. And that's that Caribou still trying to get out of that hole down in the runway in Kong Island. You can see he's off the side in soft sandy soil. Just missed getting the prop. Good view from the backside. See how far down under it went. Hard to dig it out. Finally got the natives to do it. Did it a lot faster and a lot cheaper. This is up at Site 118, northwestern Laos. And now we have some views of the Caribou. The two flown over, 851, 853, initially by Don Schwabel and Ed Eckholdt from Canada in the summer of 1962. They didn't have reverse props on them when they first arrived. It was about a year and a half later that they were installed. One of the best twin-engine STOL planes that was ever invented. A pleasure to fly. Everyone who flew it Thought it was the most wonderful airplane. I did. I put some 4,000 hours in it, mostly instructing in it. And it's really a superb airplane to fly in. Sitting on the ground here at Longcheng, near the karst. A great stoll performer. You could get it into 1,100-foot strips, in and out. These are two of the Army Caribous, painted brown. Up at Samtong. Bob Buell's huts in the background. And one of the Army airplanes in the monsoon season. And in the vicinity of Reedaville Ridge in the rainy season, heading south with the gear down. Another view at Longcheng. Longcheng is really Lima Site 98, which very few people knew. Another upcountry site. This is over at Ken Tao on the Thai border. There's Sayaburi, Porter Huff facing away from us, Tony Bertucci facing us with a Caribou taking off. Down in Bangkok with one of the Caribous. The early days in Don Muang Airport. This is a photograph of 853, which I ferried over from Canada. We're presently here on the ground at Edmonton. That's the Navigator. On short final approach, Caribou about to land at Samtong. After he's landed, he's taxied back, offload the cargo. And getting ready to fire the engines up and start out again. Another nice view of the Caribou. Taxiing out to the west in Samtong and preparing for departure. Gets to the end of the runway, swings around, hold the brakes, full power, release the brakes and proceed. Hold the yoke back, and it comes off the ground just about 49 knots. That's about below safe single engine speed, so you had about 17 seconds there to get the flaps up into position in case you lost an engine where you'd be safe. Once the gear up in the wells and the flaps retracted, it was a nice clean airplane and climb right out to altitude. There it is heading east just after takeoff. Left turn out of traffic. The Caribou has the R2000 M2 engines in it. are the same engines in the military C-54 or the DC-4 aircraft. They proved very reliable in the Caribou operations that we had in Laos. Extremely reliable engines. Took a great deal of punishment. That's H.K. Wu on the right, taking a look at the airplane ahead of us, which is Ed Dearborn here. This is Ed Dearborn that flew formation with us going back to Vientiane. You can see the airplane he's flying has been painted an overall very light gray for a test for corrosion control. Another good view of it, you can see by the gray color there. And this is one of the L-20 Beavers at Wamung trying to land. It didn't make it, had to make a go-around. Another one of the pictures of an Air America L-20 Beaver. They had a number of them in the early 1960-61, but then they were phased out quite rapidly. This Continental's Piper aircraft. And Tainan with two PBYs, the tail dragging her beach, and a Mandarin jet in the background. Picture of one of Air America's H-34 Sikorsky's helicopters. Wayne Knight here doing a pre-flight. And all closed up and taxiing out. We navigated in the early years by knowing where some of the Hilltail choppers had been shot down or crashed. It's our only means of navigation. And over Reedaville Ridge with that C-46, X-ray Willie Elk Alpha Bravo. The DC-3 undergoing maintenance, Air America upcountry. And another view of the C-47 heading south. This was flown by Art Wilson. He had just made a drop up country. You can see he's still got his cargo door off, heading back to Vientiane for another load. And this is Continental's Scottish Pioneer twin-engine Stoll, inherited from Bird & Son. And a view of Continental C-47. This is a Wren, a Cessna Wren Stoll modified tricycle geared airplane. It had a canard in the nose, high lift wings. It proved to be a bit fragile. It didn't last too long. Picture of the DO-28 Continental. And a better view of the Dornier 28 with a three-bladed prop that Continental had. Air America, you see here, had the two-bladed prop Dorniers, which were a bit underpowered. Nice view of Continental C-130E airborne, heading up country. And a view looking down on it. You could carry 46,000 pounds for airdrops. Proved a bit hazardous down low because you had a huge wet wing and you had to get slowed down quite a bit. And it was hard to get around in the turns without pulling a lot of G-load. So we didn't do too much close-in support with airdrops. But it'd make an impressive drop when you put out 46,000 pounds of parachutes in one pass. There's a picture of the B-26B down at Takli. Al White and I flew. This one is parked over in the corner. And these are some airborne photographs I took out of Tainan when I was giving check rides to a number of the Air America pilots. And that's Ed Eckholdt there giving instruction in the B-26s. This airplane that you see here is flown by Maury Kensler. Another view as we're taxiing out for takeoff. We used a bombing range north of Tainan for bombing, napalm, and low-level strafing practice. Al White and Ed Eckholdt flew a photo recce bird out of Takli in the early stages of the 1960s, before we all got checked out in the hard-nose gun variety aircraft. Marvelous performing airplane. Carried quite a load. That's Chuck Cameron flying in formation is Maury Kensler. Now into the Helios. Here's one taking off out of Samtong with the flaps down, and one landing at Site 58 in northern Laos. Marvelous performer, the Helio. Proved its worth before the Pilatus Porter came on the scene. Many of the pilots flying the Helio would put in 50 landings a day in and day out, month after month, flying over 200 hours a month as an average. Marvelous performing airplane. You had to really see it, be it, and be there to understand what this airplane meant to people. Leading edge slats open automatically during final approach. You get the speed down as low as 35 knots, if not lower. A tribute to its design. This is Phil Tomasky. I took this back in 1962 as he came sailing by me from altitude over Reedaville Ridge heading into Vientiane. There's Ed Eckholdt standing next to one of the T-28s he flew. And these T-28s, there were 5 crew initially. Ed Eckholdt, John Wyron, Joe Hazen, Rick Byrne, Don Romes, and Tom Jenny were the initial 5 checked out by the commandos in Udorn. And we pretty regularly flew these aircraft, doing bombing and strafing missions up country on various road junctures, trails, convoys. This particular sortie we were returning after we had been bombing and strafing a convoy on a road leading into North Vietnam. You see the racks are all clear, bombs, and our guns are empty. So we returned to Vientiane reload and come back again for a continued mission. It was quite highly maneuverable, but extremely lightly armed, and also very little armor plate, if any, we had. Some airplanes had 500 round cans of ammo, and some only had 100 rounds of 50 caliber ammo. This is taking off out of Mung Sui, T-28. Looking down at the runway at Longcheng, early 1963, before the build-up, and looking at Ba Na, 1,200 feet long, ended up on the ridge line. Used to go in there with the Caribou. Sam Tong in the early days, looking down in the bowl at the runway run east and west. And this airplane just took off from Long Prabang, turning left out of traffic. There it is over the Mekong. This is some of the view we had every morning when we went up country. A low-level cloud drifting around, making it very difficult to get in and land or in dropping in certain areas. This is around Pacao near the 9,000-footer mountain. Very poor weather. Hazardous conditions in the monsoon season and the smoky season. This is a view of the smoky season. That demarcation line is at 11,000 feet where the inversion is, and all below that is all smoke. Very difficult to see the ground even vertically through it. There's a valley down at Vientiane. An old steam engine up at Long Prabang. Tried to keep the runway relatively flat, I take it, using this old thing. In the center left, Lima Site 58, Hua Mung, Helio and Caribou landing site. A very early photograph of Sam Tong looking southwest towards the runway. Site 36, Nakang, up in northern eastern Laos. Another view looking down the runway on approach as you come in over the rocks and trees. Got to be a Caribou and a C-123 strip later. Another view of Sam Tong closer in, short final approach to the west. And Hua Mung again, looking down from the north at the runway. On the ramp in Vientiane, Royal Air Lao Lockheed Electra in the background. And through the grass you can see in the distance another Caribou sitting up on a hillside site. This was a photograph from Pop Buell. He took these in 1958 over at the PDJ. There's a picture of the PDJ, that plane of jars that we mostly saw as we came by on the western side. This is about as close as any of us really like to get to it. We never flew directly over it. Skirted it by quite a few miles. It was heavily armed with anti-aircraft. Down in the valley of Vang Vieng with the limestone karst mountains in the background. This is Lima Site 118 encampment, northwestern Laos. This is a photograph Art Wilson gave me. He's about to land on a beach straight ahead at a C-46 in Korea. That's a photograph of Vientiane, nestled along the Mekong in Laos. And another view just outside of Vientiane down the river, the Mekong. That's a crashed Helio down at Pak Se. Continental scrap heap in Vientiane, damaged aircraft. And this is that Pak Se Helio Courier that was flown by Al Sandoval, who got killed in it. He was taking off, departing Pak Se, Laos, climbing out very steeply, rolled over, wing went straight in, as you can see by the consistency of the wreckage. Very little remained intact airplane. It went in extremely hard. Cause was unknown. This is Cheng Kong. This is where John Wyron had an accident on takeoff. You can see here the airplane in the center of the picture at the end of the runway. Had engine failure just at the end of the runway. Impacted high ground very hard. The Caribou in the background, we were flying. Just happened to be in the vicinity and heard an emergency call that he'd gone in. We landed and cut him out of the wreckage. He wasn't injured, it was only his head. Had a big gash in it, was all. Most fortunate. Here you can see the view of the cockpit, the way it was, where we had to use crowbars and saws to get him out, and lever him out of the cockpit area. Far left of the screen, you can see a little porter, Pilatus porter in the hill, trying to sneak through in a foggy day. Didn't make it. This is Al White's C-123 accident in Longcheng in 1965. Tried to make a go-around. Caught a wingtip, did a horizontal cartwheel, and ended up in the karst. Co-pilot got killed, but Al White and Tom Greiner, the kicker, survived. This is a not very good photograph of Fred Riley's shoot-down on the plain of jars in a C-123. And locating a damaged Helio in the Caribou. Did a lot of this, carrying bits and pieces of Helios that were damaged, put them into Caribous and take them to Tainan for repair. This is Carl Kennedy's Helio accident after he'd gotten checked out in the Helio. There's a little corner of Vientiane at Wat Thai Airport in Laos. One of the Air America L-20 Beavers back in early 1961 had a ground loop, threw the engine out. There were a number of Beavers, L-20s, that they phased out very rapidly. This Helio is at 118 site up in Laos. R.C. Smith was landing and did a ground loop, went off the side of the runway. Another good view of it. Damaged the wing a bit, and the tail. Got him pushed back on the runway though, and he fired it up and went back to Vientiane. This is a Russian Li-2. It's a copy of the DC-3. There were 3 of these given to the Laotian government by the Russians. They parked them over in the corner of the field. They had no spare parts whatsoever, so very little maintenance could be done on them. And as you can see, they went in a poor state of repair. They all became derelict. Another good view of dereliction. Russian Lend-Lease. And one of the Russian helicopters that they flew in, it never flew after it arrived. This is a Laotian barbershop in Vientiane on the edge of the Mekong River. Cheap haircuts. Now we'll get into some of the natives now that we encountered up country. Everywhere we landed there were always crowds of them about. Well, we could always find enough to help us offload. Here are the ladies watching to see if we brought anything fancy for them. A couple of pack horses with one of the males hard at work in the mountains. And a young girl fishing. Some of the many colorful women with their costumes and children riding on a buffalo. The men wore quite simple, plain black pajama-like outfits. The children were quite sweet, quite nice, liked to have their photographs taken. They weren't shy at all. You can see the colorful attire that the women wore. Great bangles of silver around their necks and their arms. And all the different tribes in the mountains had a different type of gown that they wore. They're really colorful. The children worked at a very young, early age. Women going out for their daily work, barefooted of course. Shoes were non-existent. A young male girl here. About this age they worked and shared alongside the older women. There are 3 Buddhist monks up country discussing the best way to get back to Vientiane. Another Buddhist monk in Vientiane. And a young Buddhist monk. Some more monks. Side 58, Wamung. And a couple of young male women by the runway in Longcheng. and a lot of children about. Young girls liked having their picture taken. They weren't shy. Some of the colorful women. These are refugees which we were gathering to bring down to Vientiane from Ba Na. Some more monks in Vientiane. Three of Vang Pao's special troops guarding a C-123 at Mung Sui. And some male troops helping to offload a caribou. Some additional ones. The old Chinese fellow who came out of the mountains. What a marvelous appearance he had. Three-headed white elephant, golden parasol, marking the street juncture from the airport into the city at Vientiane. This is Rue Sam Sen Tai, just outside the Constellation Hotel, Vientiane, one of the major streets. A view of the Victory Monument in Vientiane hadn't been completed at this time. This is about 1965, this photograph. And looking down towards the Wat Pagoda at the end, on the left is the Lido nightclub and the Lido Hotel. And yes, you guessed it, the White Rose, with yours truly, Ed Eckholdt. I swear. View of the Lido, the nightclub. Concord Restaurant was inside, where the Corsicans ran it. This is the Viang Ratri, known as the Green Latrine. Vientiane, watering hole, rare America. The Setha Palace, Ed Dearborn, Don Koenig, Don Campbell. Ed Eckholdt lived here, Fred Walker. The Lang Zhang Hotel, one of the newest and latest, alongside the Mekong in Vientiane. 1965. That's Jimmy Pearson with the Bank of Indochina behind him. Air America, Vientiane at the airport, with a couple of the Messerschmitt cars that some of the crews had. It's on the ramp looking towards operations. And in operations, looking out the other direction, down the aircraft all lined up, preparing to depart for drop missions. Another major street in Vientiane, the only one that had a stoplight. 1961. This is the Udorn Air America compound swimming pool complex with a restaurant and bar. And this is another view up the valley around Vientiane, with the houses and the jungle areas. One of the crew location boards kept in Vientiane. And down in Patpong in Bangkok, 1963, Max's Bar, Arch Taylor's, Tip Top Cafe, and Mizu's Kitchen. This is down in Pattaya, down on the beach, in one of the offshore islands. This is in Pattaya, a tree in the middle of the road near Barbo's bar and restaurant. Taipei on a more favorable weather day. Smog and haze. And Civil Air Transport, the CAT headquarters, Changshan Peilu, Taipei. This is at the peak in Hong Kong in the early 60s, looking down towards Kowloon. And over in Kowloon, this was taken from the Ambassador Hotel, looking across the bay at sunrise. And another view looking towards the island of Hong Kong from the Ambassador Hotel, before the high rises started to sprout. Some of the American Navy at anchor for R&R in Hong Kong. And another view with the Star Ferry in the bottom of the picture, looking across at the Hong Kong shoreline. Okay, now we take you into the Tom and Knit House apartment complex at 5 Convent Road in Bangkok. A number of Air America crews lived at the Tom and Knit House. Ed Eckholdt, Red Fredericks, Joe Hayes and John Wyron for a period of time when they come down for layovers after flying countless missions in Laos. Have a little bit of a break. That's Ed Eckholdt's XKE Jaguar coupe. Another view of it. Take that over to Pat Pong. Park that behind Herbie Lou's 300 SL Mercedes. Looking down Convent Road in the quiet summer days of the early 1960s. Another view. It's all gone now. It's all high-rise businesses and banks. That's a Bangkok Christian hospital, nestled back in the trees at the other end of Convent Road. The Erewhon Hotel in the early days, government-owned, magnificent old lady of a place. A lot of the airline crews from Air America would stay there when they come to Bangkok. Grand old hotel in the Grand Manor. And this is what happened to it. They knocked it all down and built this monstrosity to replace it. That's the Hyatt Regency Erewhon that you see here now. Doesn't hold a candle to the old place. Another view of Bangkok, overlooking the city and the Chao Phraya River. This is Pat Pong Road. Sunday morning, after the big Saturday night soirees and all the gin mills going full tilt. This is how quiet it looks the next morning. Originally in 1961, there were only 2 bars in Pat Pong Road. The Roma Bar and the Aladdin, and Max built his bar. Now you can see from these photographs, as it starts to build up more and more throughout the years. Eventually it proved to have 118 bars in Pat Pong Road. Then they opened Pat Pong 2 and Pat Pong 3. Now there are over 500 bars in the area. This is looking down Surrey Wong Road, Rose Hotel on the right. Another view at the other end of Pat Pong, looking down Selam Road, past the Samlors, which eventually became called Tuk Tuks. This old building still exists over on Siriwang, near the Vientiane Hotel. Lucy's Tiger Den, Tiger Rydberg's bar. Ed Eckholdt, Tiger Rydberg, Dick Elder, Bangkok. Lower left, Stan Wilson. Upper left, Willie Ettebeck. Far right, Tony Poe. And Jack Shirley on the far right. There's the Madrid bar. There's Jack Shirley on the left. Ed Eckholdt and Les Strauss. Another view. Jack Shirley sitting left looking glum. Ed Eckholdt in the middle. Izzy Freeman on the right side. And another view. There's Jack Shirley far left. Ed Eckholdt sitting at the bar in the glasses. Bill Lair. Bob Mulberry on the left with Pat Landry. Oh, good old Max from Max's Bar, 42 Pat Pong Road. Sadly no longer with us. Died in 1998. That's Max and Ed Eckholdt outside Max's Bar. The red door in the background. Restaurant. Bud Drinker on the right with Ed Eckholdt at Max's. And there's Max back in the 60s with his young son and his daughter. And here they are, 1995. Max on the left with his daughter and his son, and they're going to the United States. Bill McShane on the left with Ed Eckholdt, California, 1976. Joe Hammer and Louise Hammer with Ed Eckholdt, 1976, California. There's Ed Eckholdt and Pat Pong, in 1976. With Felix Smith. We had just been to Sri Lanka trying to get a job in a DC-8. Ran across Pop Buell at the same time. Then we got to Hong Kong, found Art Wilson, who's here on the right, Felix Smith on the left with Ed Eckholdt in the center. Art Wilson's birthday. We took Art over to the Peninsula Hotel, wined him and dined him, and then they threw us out for disorderliness. There's Art on the left with Ed Eckholdt. And old shower shoes, Art Wilson, Hong Kong, 1976. Bill LeCount on the doorstep of his house in San Diego when he was flying for a PSA. There he is in the cockpit, Captain Bill LeCount, Boeing 727. That's Rocky Neeson on the left with Ed Eckholdt at Rocky's hideaway cabin up in Mount Baker, Washington State. That's Pete Levin on the left, Ed Eckholdt on the right, Luxembourg, inside a DC-8 cargo hold. Pete Levin left, Ed Eckholdt center. That's Jimmy Pearson on the right. Down in Miami, Florida, on the right is Jimmy Pearson, center is Tom Jenny, and that guy on the left is Ed Eckholdt. It's from a DC-8. Here's Al White on the right. Came to visit Ed Eckholdt in England. And we're down in Bangkok at Tiger's Bar. Jack Shirley, right side, Willie Utterback with the glasses looking this way. This is a small reunion out in California. Burlingame, that's Rick Byrne. About 1968. So 1969. Red Fredericks on the left, Mark Trail, Rick Byrne, Frank DeGrazia, and Ed Eckholdt. A good picture of Red Fredericks, his cowboy hat. Red Fredericks and Ed Eckholdt. Red Fredericks and Mark Trail, both very good friends. Two very nice guys. Mark Trail, who just recently passed away, November '98, with Ed Eckholdt on the right. Ed Eckholdt's apartment in New York. Bob Nunez on the left with Bill Donovan, Jim McFarland, and Betty Donovan. Steve Stevens arrived to take photographs. This is 1968, when I was flying for Pan Am. And a visit to San Francisco. Frank DeGrazia is on the left, 96 with Ed Eckholdt. Another view of Frank and Ed. Orlando reunion, Air America. Charlie White's on the left with Joe Hazen. Who knows what they're singing? There's Joe on the left with Charlie, and Jane Mullins on the right. Jess E. Walton. That's Larry Owen on the left. Jess Walton in the center with Joe Hazen on the right. There's Joe Hazen and Jack Rife. Al White. Billy Zeitler on the right, and the couple in the back, Jack Leister and his wife. Ed Eckholdt. And Jack Rife regaling the ladies in the courtyard at Orlando at the Air America reunion. Ray Short's on the left with Jack Leister on the right. Billy Zeitler found a tray of chicken somewhere. Billy Zeitler and his wife Lois. Val Bednikoff. And June White, Al White's wife, in the center. Dr. Larry Saul with Charlie White's. And Charlie White's talking to Lois, Billy Zeitler's wife. On the left is Jack Leister's wife. Jack's in the center. And that's Sally Walker, Fred Walker's wife, on the right. Bill Donovan on the left, having a chat with Jack Leister's wife. She's really interested. Ed Eckholdt discovered Evelyn Quay, one of the cat flight attendants who showed up at the reunion. Jack Leister's wife. I think Air America's a bit too much for her. Linda and Ray Shords. And Billy Zeitler's wife, Lois, on the left. That's Chris in the center, Charlie White's daughter, with Charlie on the right. Doug Smith on the left, with Tom Saylor on the right. Delight Posky on the left, and that's Bill LeCount in the background, staring at us. Gary Palmer on the right side. K.D. Nolan and Joe Hazen on the left. There's Bill LeCount on the left, Delight Posky, and Ed Eckholdt. Delight Posky in her main squeeze. That's Bill LeCount on the left. In the background with a hat is Colleen Rife, Jack Rife's ex. Gary Palmer's on the right. Sam Jordan talking to Tom Jenny. Milty Olson and Jane Mullins. Stan Wilson, one of Air America's finest. Paul Severson. Sam Jordan, Milt Olson, Willie Utterback, Paul Severson, and Tom Jenny. Milt Olson talking to Paul Severson. Tom Jenny far left, Milty in the background talking to Jane Mullins, Paul Severson on the right. Tom Jenny and Rex Nellick. Bit worse for the wear. Ed Eckholdt and Tony Poe. Luke Peters talking to Tony Poe. Milty Olson. Milt Olson, Willie Utterback, Tony Poe, Ed Eckholdt, Luke Peters. There's a new lineup with Milt Olson, Utterback, Tony Poe, Luke Peters, and in came Robbie Roberts. This is in Bangkok, the way things are still going. That's Izzy Freeman on the far right side with the little dolly with his head on her shoulder. This is 1990 in Taipei. That's Peter Hsu. He worked in traffic in Tainan, or CAT. Harry Cockrell on the left with Fred Walker on the right. And Eric Schilling on the right with Dave Lampard on the left. Hugh Marsh killed himself in a DC-8 crash in Alaska. That's Bill Shaver on the right talking to Professor Bill Leary on the left. Ed Eckholdt on the left talking to Felix Smith. Ed Eckholdt on the left with Harry Cockrell. Dave Lampard talking to Bob Ruslow with his wife Nyla. Eddie Sims on the right with Felix Smith. Harry Vanessa on the left Connie Segrist on the right. Doc Johnson, who gave me my initial captain's check, Air America 1961. Catfish Rain on the left, Ed Eckholdt center, Randall Richardson on the right. Harry Vanessa and Nancy Vanessa with Ed Eckholdt. Dave Hickler at the slots in Las Vegas. Al Rich, Ed Eckholdt, Tom Jenny. Bill Welk, Eddie Sims. Dave and Nyla Lampard. Eric Schilling. Ed Eckholdt and Tom Crone. Stu Dew on the left with Felix Smith in the background, and a grinning Eddie Sims in the far right. In the foreground, Ray and Linda Shords. That's Cliff Berg on the left, Ed Eckholdt, Jack Rife, and Robbie Roberts. This is Joe Hazen with a Vice Admiral Ilg, who got us aboard the aircraft carrier in San Diego for a walkthrough. Tom Jenny on the left with Rex Nellick on the same tour. Joe Hazen, what do you mean it doesn't have elevators? There's Joe Hazen with his son Anthony on the carrier. And on the bridge, Joe Hazen with Tom Jenny in the background of the carrier. Stretch Lewis and his wife. Ed Eckholdt and Linda Shords in Miami, 1996. This is a repeat photograph with Robbie Roberts on the right, Jack Rife, Ed Eckholdt, and on the left is Cliff Berg. Another final view of Ray and Linda Shords, Christmas Eve. Les Strauss, still living in Bangkok. That's my maid in Bangkok at the Tom and Knit House. And a visit to D.I. Coney's place in California. Ed Eckholdt on the left and Don Coney on the right. There's his family, Donna, his daughter, his wife, Jeannie, Ed Eckholdt, and Don Coney on the right. Here I am. I found in Nice, France, parked behind us, was a de Havilland Caribou. Registration showed that it actually had been an Air America Caribou. It had Maltese markings on it now, all painted up. It was in superb condition. It's flying on aid missions in Africa out of Nice, France, and Malta. Well, my friends, it's time to bring this video to a close. You've had to sit through some 600 photographs that I've tried to narrate for you. I took most of these photographs in the 1960s, some 37 years ago. Unfortunately, I never got everyone I intended I would like to have put onto this video film, but I hope that it has been somewhat enlightening and brought back a bit of nostalgia and looking at old friends and a lot of those that have departed and are not with us any longer. So as you can see from this photograph, I'm in England. I've stopped flying, finally put my feet up, got my trusty dog beside me, and let the good times roll. So thanks again for watching. I've enjoyed making this, and God bless all of you.